What's up, gamers? This is NGG here with another review video. This time it is for Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Fire Emblem, the new one is coming out soon, so I have been working on this one to try to finish this one down before the new one comes out. So hopefully this review is out before the new one comes out, so I can finish this one so that when the new one comes out I can get started on that one right away. Anyway, so we are going to be talking about all three houses. I have some special guests for you that will help us talk about all three houses, and we will introduce them when the time comes. But for right now, what I am going to go into is I'm going to go into story, then gameplay, and then we'll talk about each house and stuff like that. So first, let's get into story. So we have the three leaders of these houses. So each house is controlled by a leader. So we have Edelgard, who controls the Black Eagle house. We have Dimitri, who controls the Blue Lions, and we have Claude, who controls the Golden Deer. And so all of these people are from bigger, like, regal places. Like Edelgard is from the Adressian Empire, and then you got Dimitri, who's from the Holy Kingdom of Fargus. I think he's a prince as well. And Claude, who's part of the Alester Alliance. I think he's a high-ranking member in the Alester Alliance. His one I didn't go into at all, so I don't know too much about his storyline. This is why we have help. And all of them form, like, all of those places are united in the Kingdom of Fargus. So they all are studying in this church, the Church of Steros. And in this church, you have a couple of leaders themselves. You have Lady Rhea, who controls the churches, and there are smaller churches throughout, but all of these the people who are the head of their houses are studying in the church to be leaders and tactics and all that stuff. And this is where the story begins. So you are thrusted in the beginning of the game, you are thrusted right into a fight. You see all the leaders of the houses running at you, and you have to protect them because they're going into a village you protect. And so after you defeat them, you find out that you have some special power that turns back the hand of time, because they almost kill Edelgard and the bandits do, and you turn back the hands of time and defend her. And now everybody wants you part of their team. You know, they all try to engage with you and try to get you to come over and be a member of their territories so that you can help protect their territories. You also have the Knights of Steros, who come and help you at the end. They show up when the battle is done, and they recognize the leader of the Knights of Steros recognizes Gerald, which is your dad, who is a mercenary. So he recognizes your dad, and he's like, hey, we haven't seen you in forever. So you find out that your dad, Gerald, used to be a high-ranking knight in the church. And so you are sent back to the church, and you meet Lady Rhea, and Lady Rhea decides that she wants to make you a professor. So instead of becoming part of any of these people's territories, you are entrusted to teach one of the team houses. So that's where you pick whichever house you want, and that's where the houses really start breaking off. Some of the storylines will I don't know if they stay the same, if they have different things, but you have monthly things that you have to do in order to, like, teach your students and work with them, and that'll be in gameplay. So let's talk about gameplay. In gameplay, you have a couple of things that you could be doing monthly. So they give you, like, this year calendar, and you could be doing things monthly. And so, like, the first thing you do after picking your house, you can start exploring the castle, And the castle's going to be a little closed off in the beginning, but it starts to slowly open up as the game progresses. I guess it gives you time to like navigate the story and navigate the church. So while you're exploring the castle, you get to talk to all the students. You get to find like these bluish objects on the floor, and you get to return them to who they belong to. That'll help you with the character's motivation, and that should increase as you are going along in the story. And there are lots of ways to increase the character motivation while you are in exploration mode. You can cook and have cook with them. You can have meals with them. That increases their motivation. You are only given a certain amount of items you can do every time you explore, and as you progress in your professor level, as you level up as a professor, that will increase. But so it's limited to how much your professor level is, with the max being 10 per time. But I think you start off with only 3 or 4 things you can do, so you have to use what time you have exploring wisely, talking to all the people. If you want to try to get people from other houses, you have to build relationships with students outside your house, get them to move over. You could also, like, there's singing at the church to help raise your magic level for your it helps team build, so you can get 2 other characters with you, so they'll team build together, and with you and your all 3 of you guys' motivations will increase towards each other, and you will also learn a little bit of white magic at the same time. So with the cooking, you cook 1 object that usually affects your month, so all your stats boost based on whatever it is you cook per month. Later on in the game, you can use some special skills, special, like, it's not money, but it's something you get from battling, and you can build up the statues in the back right hand corner of the church, and that'll help you boost like whatever it is you pick. It'll tell you, okay, this will boost XP, this will boost Lance stats, will go higher 10%. Like, whatever you pick in the statue will be based on how fast your party can learn that item. While you're exploring, you can also be going to the market. I would highly suggest buying these like seals for certification, so that if you're certifying your characters in the middle of weeks, that you don't run out. So always have a few handy, so that when your characters are leveling up, you can gain their class levels. So there's lots of different classes in this game as well. What I would highly recommend is picking a class, like looking down the list and seeing the classes that you want to put each particular character, and just working towards that goal. Like, you could pick specific goals for your characters. They'll sometimes, when you're teaching them in the end of the week, they'll ask to change. If you don't want to change, you can tell them no. If you want them to change what they're working to, you can put yes. For the most part, I did manual training. I didn't let the computer automate it. You can let the computer automate it if you want. It was just not something I do. It's not something I recommend, because I was a little bit of a perfectionist, and I kind of wanted my characters built up to what I was leveling them up at the end, since I had written down everything I wanted them to be at the end, and I was working towards those specific goals with those specific characters. The next thing you can do is you can do tutoring. So if for the week, if you don't want to explore, you can do tutoring. And what tutoring will do, it'll take a specific group of students, it'll show you which ones are coming with you, and it'll teach them whatever skill set it's being trained for that week. And so all the people's motivations will increase a little bit, like half, I believe 50%, and the rest won't get any motivation increase when you're doing tutoring. So it's pros and cons with tutoring. Like, you guys learn skills and you guys increase your motivation, but the rest of the people who didn't do the tutoring won't have their levels increased of motivation. Another thing you can do is you can rest. And so what resting does is, once you get a special sword, it brings back the power of that sword like 5 points. So for every time you use the sword, it takes away some points, and if you want to be able to reuse that sword, that special sword, you have to rest. And it also increased the motivation of people when they get to rest. I didn't find it the most productive way to increase the motivation. The only time I kind of used it is when I really needed to recharge that sword. The last thing you can do is go into battle. There are a bunch of battles, like quest battles, like when you're talking to people in town, that will give you certain battles that'll give you certain quest items. There will also be certain battles that are they'll have numbers on them, and you usually get 2 battles a week. If you raise your professor level enough, you could get up to 3 a week, and that will help you obviously level up your characters, increase motivation when they're fighting around each other, and gain skills as well. So it's one of those ways, like other past Fire Emblems, I felt like they didn't allow you a way to, like, you know, grind, and this is the way of grinding. Now, if you want to grind on a few more battles, don't pick the ones with numbers. If you pick the battles without the numbers, you can grind as many of those battles as you want. But if you pick one with a number, it will tick off, and once you get to 0, you no longer are allowed to battle. So if you want to grind any battling, you definitely don't want to pick one with a number on it first, until you're ready to finish grinding off. Let's get into each house. So from here on, it might be a little spoilerish, guys, and I would highly recommend, if you want to know nothing about specific house story and you want to be surprised, skip over to the ratings, which we will go to. I'll put a link in the description with all the skip points so that you know where to skip and where to join up with us at the end if you want to be completely surprised by the ending. Let's introduce our host. Is going to be Minako, and he will be taking care of Blue Lion's house.
Hey everyone, my name is Devine, Cummings voice acting, and I'm here to do the Blue Lion's route, aka Dimitri's route, in Fire Emblem 3 Houses. To start off with, we have a bunch of characters. The first person I really started to interact with was Sylvain. Sylvain is kind of a womanizer in a sense, but he has a lot more to his character. If a woman is interested in him, he's not sure if they're interested in him as a person or it's because he has a crest, and within doing so, if a woman were to fall in love with him, where they only love the baby because that person is a child of a noble worthy of a person with a crest, or do they love Sylvain for just being Sylvain, essentially? That is for Sylvain. The next character I end up having and interacting with was Felix. Felix is also in the Blue Lions, and he has a really big attitude problem, but you know, you understand why Felix has an attitude because of losing his brother. So far, you know, Felix has a lot of family issues, obviously, but within losing his brother, you have his father, and the reason why him and his father butt heads, if you do interact with him, both the side quests with Felix or in the time skip with Blue Lions and Dimitri, the reason why Felix has an issue with his father, and let alone his brother dying, is because when Felix's brother did die, Felix's father said he died like a true warrior, essentially, or a true knight, and that just didn't sit well with Felix because he felt like his brother was expendable and just replaceable, no matter rather if it was in battle or if they were related, and that was really his kids just dying for the sake of what they believed was right, and Felix just didn't really agree with that. So that was Felix for me in our interaction. Another interaction I greatly enjoyed a lot was Antoinette. Antoinette, I really didn't expect too much, to be fair, but she's really funny. She's great conversations to have around, not just with Byleth, but with all the characters, which is funny enough. Antoinette, a lot of the cast, Antoinette has a lot of good interactions, which is not something I expect because she's not the right-hand man for Dimitri, but she does get along with a lot of the Blue Lions class, which I was not expecting. And really with Antoinette, not just for her quick, you know, her funny quirks and everything, but Antoinette isn't really anything unique compared to the previous two I just mentioned, but that was the third interaction that I had with the Blue Lions route was Antoinette. Moving on, the fourth interaction was Mercedes. Mercedes is an archer, which I made her my priestess and white mage, essentially. Mercedes is very kind. She's very respectful. Mercedes, her whole backstory is that she ran away to the church because she was engaged in an arranged marriage, and she didn't want it to do that. She wants to find her own path. That's not her family giving her away to somebody else. But at the same time, she explains that her dad, along with other family members, are ill and sick. So if she doesn't follow those family traditions, her family bloodline can essentially die. She tries to have this balance between her choices in her life and what her family, to also please her family and their life as well. Moving on from Mercedes is Dedue. A lot of people might not know about Dedue since he is the second in command of Dimitri, so you can't recruit him. But Dedue is from Duscur. If people who haven't explored Blue Lions or Dimitri's route, Duscur is a long forgotten land that has been destroyed, pillaged, and burned down, and people of Duscur are seen to look down upon just because of their lineage, and along with creating wars and battles and being super strong, which is kind of why he's the second best character to have on your team. But because Dedue is from Duscur, a lot of people in the house, despise them because of their history and because of their race of being savages, villains, and monsters. So the next person, it's not very my favorite, but I have to say him anyway. The next person is Ash. He was essentially like a street rat, poor. But he explains that during his time before joining the church, he used to rob people. Like, he used to go out and rob people for riches, ruins, and food for his family. And he said he stumbled across a really wealthy house one time and came across a book. Now, him reading this book was very fascinating and interested to him. The problem with him reading this book is that he was still trying to rob this person at the same time of reading, so they got wind of it. They said he came out with a sword and shield and was ready to throw down, and then he saw Ash and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna take this kid and his family. He ends up joining this person's house that agrees to bring in Ash and his family, and he so happens, along from doing that, joins the Church of Sero, which is also Lady Rhea's church as well, and just become a part of the Blue Lions just because of that backstory. So I don't really have much history with Ash. Ash would not be my favorite character, is definitely one that has a lot of depth and backstory to his character. Just not very skillful and lasts very long within battles itself. So Ingrid's part of a noble family. I believe she is just a single child. Her father is also one that wants her to get married, and being a part of an engaged marriage shows she runs off. Ingrid, I do not have a lot of information for. What I do know is that I did a side quest with one of the dancers in Edelgard's quest, and within doing so, they try to ambush her, kidnap her, and then I don't remember if the kidnapping for Ingrid ends up going back to her father or they end up just trying to kill her, but it's this whole escort mission with Ingrid. And what turns out from that side quest escort mission with Ingrid and the Edelgard character is that you get Ingrid a legendary weapon, or you give her a legendary weapon that goes toe to toe with Sylvain, because he's also a spear user, and the weapon you get for helping Ingrid is a spear itself. So you essentially go through that, and there's not much really happens other than Ingrid. Again, her and Sylvain are really close, but in my path, they didn't end up together or just staying connected. They kind of end up doing their own thing. So Ingrid is kind of it for me when it comes to the Blue Lions. Towards Dimitri's story, which is the leader of Blue Lions, you go through his family origins and history, and then you realize that Dimitri and Edelgard are related, not by blood, but by adoption, because Dimitri's family has been wiped out completely. He doesn't have any history of his mother, but he does have a history of his stepmother, being Edelgard's mother, obviously, and history of being together with Edelgard and her uncle. They later on separate. They do have a cutscene explaining that, and even during the dance gathering, where if you pick the right character, you can win a unique dance move that could help you in battle. But Dimitri explains that he gifts Edelgard a knife to carve her way into the future, no matter where she goes, because they separate, and Dimitri and Edelgard really don't meet back up until Byleth gets introduced to the Church of Sero, aka Lady Rhea's church. The Flame Emperor and the rest of her colleagues, they all try to ambush the Church of Sero along with Lady Rhea, and not only does Lady Rhea get captured and get thrown away in a chamber from the Blue Lions route, but we also fall into a ditch that leads into the time skip, during the 5-year time skip, Dimitri has been put in prison, locked up for false allegations that he did not commit, false treason for a murder he did not do, that was instructed by a witch that is not related to Edelgard in any sense, but she had plotted Dimitri to get set up for a murder he didn't commit. And then on top of that, the dude is potentially dead. And yeah, the Church of Sarah has gotten taken over. And then we come back 5 years later and we find Dimitri, lost eye, distraught, and essentially just in a manic state of, depression, sorrow, sadness, despair, all that other jazz. And we find out within him doing so, and from the past 5 years, that he's essentially been killing bandits and holding off the church from them robbing it, stealing valuable items, and just fighting off bandits, just doing what they do, steal and pillage. But within doing so, he's been doing this for so long, is that we accept a woman within our group, the Blue Lions, and she ends up killing Felix's father because of it. And within her killing Felix's father, and then we have to kill her, she's just gonna go straight for Dimitri anyway. Felix is then in a state of confusion. He's like, I went on the straight and narrow with the church that led to Lady Rhea being the Flame Emperor and doing what she did. And then I went on the revenge route and it ends up getting Felix's father killed. So it's like, I don't know where to go and I don't know what path I should take. So we end up, guiding Dimitri to the right path. And then essentially we take on Edelgard's family. Well, not just her family, but we end up taking on the witch that ended up setting up Dimitri and the rest of her family of the Black Eagles. Within doing so, when you take on the witch that set Dimitri to get locked up, she explains that the reason why his family died was because Edelgard's mother was separated from her, so she set up Dimitri's father, mother, and the rest of his clan, or the rest of his village, to burn and rot for her to be with her biological family again. And then when you take out her uncle doesn't really explain anything really, you just kind of fight him afterwards. But essentially the reason why Dimitri's family is no longer existent is because Edelgard's mother set them up to die so they could be together with her biological family, with her biological mother essentially. So you fight the uncle, which leads to a rescue mission with Clyde and the Golden Deer. He separates, he gives you his bow and arrow. He's like, I'm no longer, a fighter. I'm no longer with the Church of Cerros or any of that. I'm just going to go my own path and act like this thing never happened. So Clyde doesn't fight anymore. And then all that's left is this Edelgard and, the Emperor. So then you're heading to the fight to Edelgard, and she asks this mage to essentially raises her stats to make her stronger, and she turns into this branch demonic being, which is not explained in Blue Lions. And then that's essentially the final boss, and you take her on, and then it's just this face-to-face with Edelgard and Dimitri. And Dimitri, for the first time, sticks his hands out and asks her to get up and to join them. And then she throws the knife that he gave her for so long ago during childhood, and that he ends up stabbing her with her spear, and then she ends up collapsing. And then that's kind of the end of Blue Lions. They do say that Lady Rhea comes out of her dungeon and that they release her and that she gives the Church of Cerros over to Dimitri. But other than that, that kind of ends the Blue Lions route for Dimitri and the rest of his team.
Thank you so much, Minako, for handling the Blue House for us. I feel like just hearing a lot of your explanation about the motivation for Dimitri and his house helped me understand this game a little bit more. And finally, we'll go into Edelgard, which was the path that I picked. So I played Edelgard's storyline twice because she has very different paths to take. I'll let you know when they split off. For right now, the motivation will stay the same, and then when they split, I will let you know. So you are going through the story. Edelgard is the Emperor of the Adesha army. She has her second in command, Hubert. Now, Hubert always struck me as kind of weird. His eyes are green. He's always dressed in black. So I kind of figured he was kind of like not a character I would want to mess around with in my game. So those are two of the characters in the houses. You also had Ferdinand, who was always trying to one-up Edelgard. His motivations are always he wants to be better than Edelgard. because he's Duke Ayer's son, and it is his job to have the Emperor seek counsel from his house when she finally takes control of the empire. So his motivation was always to one up her, to be better than her. It's always his motivation. The next gentleman we have in that house is Caspar. Caspar's motivation is that he is the youngest son of his house, so he has no claim to the he's not the next in succession for the line, so he has to pave his own way in the empire. So his motivation is always, he wants to be a good fighter, he wants to be strong and prove himself so that he has some position in the empire, because belongs to his house, is going to his eldest brother, and so it's not gonna be his to control. We have Bernadetta, and Bernadetta usually is like the shut-in of the group. She really doesn't like to leave her room. She is scared of everything. She screams at everything. Any little thing somebody tells her, she jumps to conclusions right away. She is one of those characters with a lot of animation. Like, she's always like, in all her stories that she's talking to people, she's always running away, kind of like saying, oh no, you did so bad, Bernie, you did so bad. Always like putting herself down. So Bernie is a very interesting character. She was my archer of the group. We have Dorothea, and Dorothea's main motivation was that she was an opera singer. She has no nobility, so she's one of the people that were brought in to because most of the kids that are in the Church of Saros learning are from noble houses. Unfortunately for Dorothea, she is not noble, but she did have some nobles pay her tuition so that she can go to the church and learn and study. So hers is to marry rich, so that her life is taken care of. So you'll see her a lot of her in her storylines. She's trying to marry up and be better, make sure that later on in life she is taken care of, and that's her main motivation in the stories. You have Petra, who is in her own right a princess as well. Petra's motivation is that she's trying to return to her place so that she can be a better princess, because she's like essentially held hostage so that her father could be doing what the empire wants them to do. So she was taken with Edelgard, and so Edelgard is in charge of safeguarding her because she is the princess in her own right to her own land. But she's not allowed to return because they just want to make sure that they keep that little area under control of Bridget. One of the other characters we have is Lenhart, and Lenhart is a lazy noble indeed. He loved to nap all day. He was one of my magic users, and all he wants to do is sleep all day. He's such a lazy person. He doesn't apply himself. He doesn't show up to class. So he is one of those people that is always being told, hey, you need to step it up. Hey, you need to step it up. In every one of his talking sequences with all the characters, they're like, hey, Lenhart, you need to step your game up. You could be so much better. You're so smart. Why aren't you applying yourself? And all he wants to do is nap all day. And so those are the main motivations of that specific house. Those are all the characters you have and all the motivations for the house pick. Now, let's talk about the first path that I chose, which was the church path. And in the church path, you have a couple of different people who you can hang on to in your party. You have Flame, who joins you for because something happens in the storyline and they find out that it's just safer for her to be with you than to be apart with her brother Sadith in some remote location. So she ends up in your house, and then you have Sadith, her brother, that his motivation is to always protect Lady Rhea. He is her second in command, and so they follow a lot of the orders from the Church of Saros, and he is just her advisor. You could also recruit Catherine. Catherine is a knight of Saros as well, and her motivation is always to be protecting Lady Rhea. She has some special hero's relic, and so they know her in the area for her hero's relic that she wields. And she is definitely a great fighter in your party if you can use her wisely. You also get, I can't pronounce his name, Cyril, and he is also very under Lady Rhea's thumb. She saved him when he was young, and he he appreciates her for that, and that's his main motivation. And so these are the characters you have for the church side. Now, the path that we took in the church side was, when you're finding out a lot of these things are happening, towns are getting poisoned, and people are turning into monsters, and you meet like this flame knight who says he's not doing it, and you meet this other guy who turns from one of the people that used to be in the town, and he's conducting all these experiments on these town people, and you find out later that that the flame emperor does not appreciate what this guy is doing, turning these people into monsters, but they're like, this is not what I wanted, this is not what I intended, but these people are helping me get to a bigger goal kind of situation. And then later on you find out that the flame emperor is Edelgard, and Edelgard decides to try to take all the crests in the tombstones, and threatens anybody with death if they touch or not let her get any of these crests. And so in the path of the church path, you're trying to protect the crest stones, you're trying to protect Lady Rhea. The reason Edelgard really doesn't want these stones was talked about in her path, and you'll hear them on both parties, but she really doesn't want those crest things because she was experimented as a child. She was a child of 7 or 8 children, and they were all experimented on with these crests to try to get them to bond with the bearer, and the only one who survived out of her siblings was her, and so she really didn't like that she was experimented on, and she really wants to eliminate the crest stuff. She wants to eliminate like the nobility class. She wants everybody to be on equal footing when it comes to status. So that's her main motivation, and your motivation is you're not supposed to allow her to take these crest stones when you're on this path, because in taking these crest stones she also is trying to kill Lady Rhea, and she has harmed some students in the school. So things are happening that you just don't agree with, and so you decide to stay with the church and protect the church from the Egyptian Empire. And as soon as that happens, they all go to war with the Empire. The Empire starts attacking everybody, and everybody is having to choose which side they're on. From all the other houses, their parents are picking either to go against the Empire or stay with the church, or vice versa. So that's just like the motivation of every characters. Lady Rhea becomes the Immaculate One. She turns into this monster to try to protect you guys, so she can turn into like a dragon at will, and that's the power she has, and she is trying to protect you, and they end up kidnapping her, and you have to now try to rescue Lady Rhea and save her from the Empire. Stuff happens and you are not around for like a good 5 years, and when you come back, that is your main thing. You're looking for Lady Rhea, and you are trying to build back the church, because while in your absence, while you were gone, the church has disintegrated, and when you come back, hope is kind of restored. All the church people start coming back and things like that. Now, the other path you could have chose was Lady Edelgard's path. And like I said before, this path, obviously Lady Edelgard's motivation is that she doesn't want anybody with these crest stones because of what happened to her. So if you choose to go with Edelgard, you are going against the church, and in that case, you have everybody after you, because Edelgard is really the one who starts the war and tries to get everybody to go to her side and talk to all these people and move them over to her side. But she can't do it alone. She needs your help. Same thing, something happens, you are gone for 5 years. They eventually find you, but in this storyline, you are an army trying to plow through people to try to get as much ground and much people as part of the empire as possible. Dimitri is trying to keep his corner of the kingdom, and the only person who's kind of trying to stay neutral is Claude. Claude keeps his alliance formed where he has the people who are nobilities and the people who are not in the fight, and he also has people who don't want to pick a side in his land. So you are trying to get rid of as many of these situations as possible, because you are trying to unite the world under one banner, and you don't want that these leaders are being taken advantage of by this monster in the shape of Lady Rhea, who's a dragon, who turns into a dragon, and she sees that as like a fake false god trying to rule the people under their command. And in the beginning of the stories, you see Lady Rhea taking a really aggressive position against anybody who's against the church. She kills them all. So like each character's motivation, each of them have their pros and cons with the storyline. I didn't know that this game had 2 storylines for Edelgard, so obviously playing the second path, the Empire side, was really interesting to me. So eventually you have to take down Claude's first, Claude's the alliance first, and then once you take over the alliance, you are able to take over, move your way over to the Empire. So here's some characters I added that can be either anybody's house. I believe they're just you can add them to your party. They're not in any specific house, and they're not from any specific branch. So I added Shamir, and Shamir is she was a resident of Duskar, and which neighbored to Petra's territory as well. And her motivation is she's just a mercenary. Whoever the highest bidder is who she will go to. It's not a bad thing. That's just the line of work she chose. And so she's recruitable by any house. I think anybody's house you can recruit her in. You also have the 2 professors. Hannon, he's one of the professors that will be teaching the other houses, and he is very into crest studying. He used to be a noble, left nobility just to be able to, his motivation was just to study the crest. So a lot of his storylines are going to be talking about crest study, about him being an ex-noble and stuff like that. Then you have Manuela. Manuela used to be the head of the opera house singers, and she left that and retired to teach. And her a lot of the things she's battling with is that she can't seem to get a man, and that is one of the things she struggles with, along with alcoholism and some other things in her storyline. So that's her motivation to stay teaching. She doesn't want to be she wanted to leave at the height of her career and learn to do something for herself other than sing. Then you have Alois. He's one of the Knights of Ceros. He used to hang out with your dad, and your dad, basically, a lot of the storylines you'll hear is how your dad took him under his wing, and he was an apprentice for your dad and stuff like that. And so he always, like, if you're able to get him in your home, in your house, and recruit him, he will always talk to you about how his job is to protect you. And I think those are all the characters that I was able to procure that aren't house specific. Okay, now let's get into a rating for this game for you guys. What are you gonna give it, Minako?
Overall, I give it a 4 out of 5, and I do think it's the best game on the Nintendo Switch. And thank you, NGG, for having me to be a part of this video.
Minako, you gave it a 4. Wow. Okay, so for me, guys, I give this game a 4.5, and the reason it is not exactly higher is because the very beginning of the game took a little long to get into the storyline, because you have to learn every character before you pick the house, and then once you pick the house, there's a lot of dialogue. I think you can skip it, but if you skip it, you won't really know people's motivations, so I highly suggest you don't. It's just a bit of a drag when you're exploring to talk to all these people, and after I got past that, I was able to blow through this game, but until that happened, I was not. So that's why I gave it a 4.5. But thank you guys for hanging out with us. Thank you guys for watching. Happy gaming. Bye.